28% of text on our webpage. So it is our task as web writers to make the text simple, easy to use, and very clear. So the first step is to keep your content concise. So get to the point as quickly as possible. Cut out unnecessary information. Use easy to understand words and phrases. So leave your $10 words at home, and avoid long sentences and paragraphs. The other kind of central thought around writing for the web is keep one idea per paragraph. People will look at a paragraph and jump from paragraph to paragraph, and it's comforting to them to know that they're not missing, a nuanced idea within the paragraph. Another tip is to use numbers, the Arabic numbers, instead of spelling them out. In terms of breaking up instead of writing one huge long paragraph or 4 or 5 paragraphs for your web page, it's good to have subheads to break up the text. People read the pages a lot easier when it's broken out into blocks, and have the subheads be very clear and concise so the readers know what they are getting into. Another way to help your readers scan the web page quickly is to use bulleted lists and text formatting. Bold words that are important and central to the page, what you want to communicate, so people can quickly understand what you are trying to achieve by having this page up. The linking is also important. Linking automatically, stands out from the rest of the text. So instead of having a bunch of, click here for more information with the click here underlined, link what they are actually going to. Or a phrase that helps them understand, what the page is taken to. Also this is helpful for like ADA web readers. Often for visually impaired people, the readers, will pick out the headlines, kind of the major text first, and then go through the links. And so if you run your page through one of these ADA readers, you often hear like click here, click here, click here, click here, click here, and obviously that doesn't give them any context for clicking. And then in terms of visuals, use them strategically. It's tempting to put kind of like stock images on a page just to break up the text and to make it more appealing. It actually can be detrimental to the user's understanding of what you're writing about if it's not contextual to the text. So, having an attractive person smiling at you when your page is about dogs actually reduces the memory retention of the user on the page. In terms of talk a little bit about like search engine optimization and writing for the website. The structure of the page should be in an inverted pyramid style. If you took any journalism courses, you know that print journalism anyway, that you want to front load the story because you don't know how many inches you're going to have in the newspaper, and your editor might chop off half your story, but you need to have the most important part up front. This also pertains is pertinent for writing for the web. It also helps with search engine optimization. Web crawlers, when they're placing your content or trying to assess the relevance of your content, will look at the first 100 characters of the page, the text in the page, and place importance on that. So if your page is about golden retrievers, you should have golden retrievers in the headline, and then also golden retrievers in the first sentence of the text on the page. And that will help your search engine rankings, or it should in any case. I think that's it. I know I was just talking a lot at you. I guess kind of like to step back a second, it's always important to ask yourself kind of 3 key questions before you create a page. It's like, what is the purpose of the page? Who is your audience? So who are you writing this page for? That's very important. And then what do you want the user to do next, whether it's an action or to get more information on a subject. And with that, I'll hand it over to Anthony and take any questions now or at the end of the discussion.
Okay. John, are there any questions coming in?
Checking right now. And bear with me for just a sec. No, nobody's raised their hand, so you're good to go.
Okay, great. So my name's Anthony Veach. I'm the lead developer at the AFL-CIO, as Dennis mentioned. Well, Dennis focused mostly on content and writing and all the things that I don't know about. I'm going to talk about, kind of extend on his one of the last things he said about determining what the purpose of your page is, and kind of my job is to help the user understand what the purpose of the page is and get them to do whatever you want them to do on the page, or to know whatever you want them to know from that page. So we do that through layout, through design, through functionality. That's kind of the area that I focus on. So let me get started here. So to start off, there are studies done every day about, where you should put each image, what color everything should be, what size you should use. Constantly studies that are conflicting with each other somewhat, but what we're going to go over today is going to be kind of the general rules that are accepted and used by everybody to the greatest effect. There are certain things that there's some leeway about how effective they are, but you can generally accept the fact that they are effective and that there's best practices at this point. So the things I talk about today are going to be mostly those best practices that are accepted. We'll get into a few topics that can kind of swing either way based on the results of those studies, but for the most part, these things are kind of global rules that you can follow. Some basic layout things I want to talk about are, when laying out kind of the text for your site, rule number 1, at least for a lot of people, is never mix fonts or font sizes within the body of the text. You can change fonts, like you have a font for your logo that's different from the body of the page, but within the body, you don't want any conflict within the text. You can change text sizes when you're doing headers for content, and that's important. That's something we'll come back to when we're talking about the search engine optimization that Dennis mentioned as well. But you want to keep things as kind of standardized as possible within the body of the page. And the topic of knowing the purpose of your page is very important, because if you don't know what the purpose of your page is, if you can't, when you're generating the page, say, this is what I want users to do or know from this page, the user's never going to figure it out. Once you know the purpose of the page, you then can design what content you want to show up where and how you want it to be displayed. But if you start complicating the page, overcomplicating the page with too much content or too many images, or, I mean, I hope nobody does this anymore, but, you know, flashing things all over the page, too many crazy colors for your font, you can run into the problem of, you know, there is a purpose to your page, but the user can't find it because they're too distracted. So the rule we always follow, especially when dealing with actions, pages that deal with actions, is keep everything as simple as possible. If it doesn't need to be on the page, don't put it on the page. And what that actually means varies based on what the purpose of the page is. So if it's an action page, like, we'll go over this one in more depth throughout this training, but the page that, John, you guys can see this page that I have up now, right? The T-Mobile page?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So this page that's up right now is a petition page that we created for a T-Mobile action. And you can see there's barely anything on it, and that's completely intentional. It should be fairly straightforward for the user to find out what they're doing. Then we'll go through a lot, like kind of each of the different parts of this page, but the point I want to make now is that it's simple, and through simplicity we hope to find kind of effectiveness. So before we kind of move on past that point, we have an image here that I don't know if for some of our pages we actually test out different images to see what's most effective, which ones generate the most activity from the user. I don't know if we tested this one, but on the topic of the image, I wanted to show everybody something that like a resource that everybody can use, because it is important. Dennis mentioned that you don't want to show the wrong images or videos when it doesn't relate to your content, and even within relating to your content, there are varying degrees of effectiveness, and you can try different things. But one thing we need to point out is that you do need to pay attention to image licensing issues. You need to provide sources when that's required, and one resource you have available to you is the Creative Commons website. Creative Commons, for those who don't know, it's a license for content that basically means that, for the most part, anybody can use Creative Commons licensed website Creative Commons licensed images, and you can find them in a variety of ways. But the easiest way that I've found is to go to search.creativecommons.org, and they have a really handy tool here that if you select Google Images here, I mean, you can look for all different kinds of content. There are quite a few options here, but if you choose Google Images and just type in AFL-CIO and search that, it'll go to just do a normal Google image search for you, but it'll only find content that has been licensed in a way that you can use it on your website for free without any problems. So you can use this. This is always a good resource when trying to find images or other types of media to use with your projects. So moving on past that point, one of the things we do pretty much every day is these action pages where we have forms of different types. Sometimes it's these petitions. Sometimes it's text message sign-up forms. Sometimes it's a tell us your story form, where it's just we ask for generally name, email, and kind of however long the story people want to tell us. But regardless of what it actually is, there are a few rules that we always follow. One of them is the overarching principle of simplicity. If the purpose of the page is get somebody to fill out this form, we remove everything that would distract them from accomplishing that task. You'll see there's no navigation on this page. It doesn't link to anything else. If you click on AFL-CIO, it'll take you to our home page. There's no other navigation on the page, be it in the header, footer, or any sidebars. We have as little text as possible, oftentimes we'll put actually larger images than these, depending on what we have available to us. And then our form is a large portion of the page over on this side. And we've actually tested out sometimes, is it more effective to have the form on the left side of the page? And, that's kind of getting into that territory of some studies or some experiments we run find that, yeah, having the form on the left side of the page can be more effective, but it's not always going to be the case, so you can kind of play around with that yourself as well. But the important part is that the form is easily visible, and it's the primary focus of the page. The other things we want to point out are we only have required fields in this form. We're not asking for people's street address. We're not asking for even a phone number for this form, even though that information could be really helpful for us. People may want to provide it, but for every form field, for every piece of information you request in a form, you're going to reduce the amount of people that complete the form, regardless of if it's required or not. And the rate at which those submissions will decline, it's too destructive to actually complete the purpose of the page. So rule of thumb is, if you have a field that is absolutely required for you to do your work, put it in there, otherwise leave it out. And what you can do is create a petition page like this, where you have a short form, and when people submit it, you can then redirect them to a longer form as part of a daisy chain that has, a thank you page or a share page. And you can try to get that information later, but for this purpose, for getting the person to sign the petition, you don't want to get in their way. You don't want to make it harder for them to complete that action. And
can I jump in
one of the other points about this page is, for those who aren't familiar with the concept of the fold of the page, the fold is the area of the screen, I guess the area of the page at which a person's computer screen will cut off whatever content's below it. So on this, I think what you guys can see now, everything is actually visible on the screen, which is great. But sometimes, we have people have this Google search. There's a point where you can't see the images anymore. That is the fold of the page. Everything below that is below the fold. When you're adding a form to a page, when you want somebody to take that action or complete that form, try to keep it above the fold of the page. There's a lot of debate about how important this is. It's kind of within the people who spend too much time thinking about this, it's probably the most debated topic, but because there's no definitive answer yet, I would still always suggest keep the form above the fold of the page, because it is the primary purpose in that situation most of the time. And yeah, you want people to be able to see it as soon as they get to the page. You want them to know exactly what they're supposed to see without having to scroll down the page. Let's see. Another small point that you can see here is our submit button is giant, the text is very large, and it's very bright. Whenever you have a form on a page, try to get the submit button to stand out as much as possible, as that is a part of the action, but also the action, clicking that button. So make sure that draws their attention. So I mentioned previously about having a sort of daisy chain. We talked on the context of gathering more information after the initial form, but more importantly, or at least also importantly, you want your forms to submit to thank you pages or share pages. So a thank you page would provide some text and potentially another action that somebody could take, be that just providing more information about themselves, or links to other petitions that people might, or at least other actions that people might find interesting. The other part of the daisy chain that we frequently use is a share page to engage people on social media or through email without getting in their way when they're completing the initial part of the action. So you don't want to have, you'll notice we don't have any share options within this page itself, because we don't want people to share it and then not complete the action themselves. So the steps we provide are complete the action, and then we make it very easy to share with whoever contacts they want on whatever platforms they want. And it's no longer an all or nothing thing. It's not you do everything on the first page or we lose the main purpose of the page. We can still get the main purpose completed and then ask for that next step. And the rates are still actually fairly high when you do a daisy chain that way to a share page. One tool I wanted to promote. I'm not the best spokesman for this tool, but it is a very successful one for us. It's a tool called shareprogress.org. I guess just Share Progress, but you can find it at shareprogress.org. And I would absolutely suggest that everybody take a look at this who's interested in kind of using these share pages. What this will do is it'll generate these share pages for you, and they do all this various testing to see, how can we get more people to share, to share content, share URLs, share whatever. And so what happens is if you create an account here, which looks like you can try it for free, you can have it generate a share page for you, and you can do a little bit of theming for it if you want to, but I believe they provide a theme automatically as well. And they give you a URL, and then when you're creating your form on, say, this form right here, we actually, when people submit this page, we redirect them to the URL that Share Progress provided to us. And then within that, we just specified, when somebody shares on Facebook, use this text. When somebody shares by email, use this text. And we can test out various things with that. But it provides a very good, a very successful, and very well-tested sharing structure for you. And you actually don't really have to worry about very much at all. And we actually have, we use it quite a bit here, and this is something that could probably be its own training entirely, so I'm not going to go into it any more than this, but if you have questions about this, let me know, or John, and we'll get that through to the people who use this heavily within our organization. And then the other thing I want to cover was, Dennis talked briefly about SEO, search engine optimization. I don't think we actually kind of covered what what we mean by that. The search engines, namely Google, they all use what are called spiders or robots to go through your page, look through all the content, and then kind of give it eventually generates kind of a ranking. So if somebody searches for AFL-CIO, what website comes up first there? And it happens to be AFLCIO.org right now, and then a number of other things related to us. But when we start getting into things like, we would love if somebody searched for T-Mobile to be the first result that comes up. We would love people to come to this page based on searching for T-Mobile. It's not actually all that easy to do, but there are ways you can improve your ranking within Google. Dennis mentioned the front-loading the content of the page and things like that, and that's absolutely correct. There are a few technical things you can do. This may get beyond kind of the scope of this training a little bit, but for those interested in using HTML when they're generating these pages, there are kind of two areas that I want to point out when you're working with that. One of them is meta tags. In the head of an HTML page, you can use specific meta tags to provide title to the page, a description, and keywords. Those are going to be the main ones that you provide. And Google prioritizes those and uses those very heavily in determining both what it shows for search results, but also specific content it shows for search results, but also in what order it shows that content. Those three fields are very important when you're generating your tags for your page. But in addition, I'm going to show something here. You can ignore kind of everything except for this blue highlighted line here. John, does this show up the HTML on the right?
Let's see. Yes, it is on faster computers. We have a slower computer here that's a little bit slow for the screen refresh. Okay, it's coming up on the slow computer now too. It just takes a little longer. Okay,
great, thanks.
Sure.
So when you're for any reason writing your own HTML, or if you're even using a WYSIWYG editor, or what you see is what you get editor, so you can just type in code through a web, or type in your content in a website, and then it lays it out on the page for you. You want to use what are called the header tags. The editors will often just call them header 1, header 2, or they'll call it H1, H2 through, I think it goes to 5 or 6. These are used very heavily by search engines to to know that they use these to determine what the kind of summary of your page is. So you only want to have one H1 tag or one header 1 tag on your page. That should be the page title. So in this case, we have T-Mobile Stop Bandit Worker Practices. Don't put more than one H1 tag on any page. Google will come through, take that, and it'll use that as, if somebody searches for T-Mobile, think about this site because that's clearly a high priority part of this page. It should have something to do with the purpose of your page as well. So as we're getting back to that initial discussion about what is the purpose of your page, try to work that into the H1 tag that you're using. As you go beyond that, you can use, I believe this is going to be an H2 tag. No, this is actually H3. You can, they descend from 1 to 5 or 6, H1 to H5 or 6 to, in degrees of importance. So H2 is the next most important, and you can use multiple header tags of each level beyond that point. So you can have multiple H2, multiple H3. You can use as many as you need, but they're still important to have in moderation for that search engine optimization to tell the search engines this is what my page is about. I think we just did it in half an hour. I went over a lot of somewhat fairly technical aspects, some less so. Does anybody have any questions about any of that? Any questions we brought up in your minds unrelated to this stuff?
Just press 1 if you have any questions at all.
And moving forward, if things come up, we did just kind of talk at you quite a bit. Try to implement whatever you can from what we talked about. If anything didn't make sense, you're always welcome to send myself or Dennis or John an email, get a hold of us by phone, whatever you need to do. We actually enjoy helping people make these things quite a bit. So if you don't have the questions right now, or if you don't want to ask it right now, just get in touch with us individually.
Actually, we do have one question from Kevin. Kevin, you're live. Go right ahead.
I was just wondering if the code that you guys use to have this page, if that's available as a template for state federation, CLCs, etc.
Yeah, absolutely. So John knows more about how we provide that to everybody, but I do know that both for state federation, CLCs, and for affiliates, we've actually generated these pages like the one we're looking at right now. We've helped generate and customize those on a case-by-case basis. But yeah, we can share that as well pretty easily.
Yeah, this is John. It would need a little bit of adjustment, and I might need a little bit of help from somebody else on the staff. This is a little more sophisticated template than I personally handle, but we can certainly tailor it to your needs.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, there's a couple other hands up. Give me just a second. Kara, your mic is live. Go right ahead.
Hi, I just have a question about what do you do with different action pages in different languages? Do you normally have dual pages or just a link that says that you like this in Spanish?
Yeah, so John, have you worked with any of our Spanish action pages in the past, or should I do this one?
I have not, so this one is all yours.
Sure. So we don't do all of our action pages in Spanish, but when they're related to specifically, I mean, it's generally immigration actions, we put them in Spanish. Sometimes we do only Spanish actions. We heavily target all of our actions to a specific audience. I'm trying to think of an instance where we had both in English and in Spanish. I think it's been at least a year ago since this happened, but we'll generate 2 pages. The part of that is kind of the technology stack these are running on doesn't support it, like just having 2 versions of the same page in different languages. So we do 2 pages, but then if we're sending the email about this action to an audience that could go either way, we'll include the link. We'll include a link on the page that says it'll say in Spanish. If do you want to see this page in Spanish, click here.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. But as an important note, if at all possible, if you think you can target those who would want to see the page in Spanish versus those who want to see the page in English or whatever language you're dealing with, try to target those groups individually and don't rely on people who would rather see the page in Spanish to have to click on that link.
I don't see any other questions, Anthony.
Okay, great. I think that's all that I had today.
Okay.
That's all I have too.
All right. Well, we all get an early pass, and we can all go out onto the playground for the rest of the hour until work.
Excellent.
Thanks again, everybody. I accidentally cut off the beginning of the recording, so just for the sake of the recording, the video that's going to go up a little bit later on. My name is John Volz. I'm a web assistant here at AFL-CIO in the Digital Strategies Department. If you have any questions, you can also email me at jgoltz as in Thomas, Z, so jgoltz at aflcio.org. And if you go to aflcio.org/digital trainings, you'll see a video, and well, there was no PowerPoint for this one, but you'll see a link to the video in a little while, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. So let me just check one more time, make sure there aren't any more questions. Okay. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Anthony.
Take care.